You are not separated from the divine. You are not broken, forgotten, or abandoned by the universe. And that hollow ache in your chest, that sense of cosmic loneliness that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., wondering if you're truly alone in this vast expanse of existence, is not evidence of God's absence. It's evidence of a frequency mismatch. It's your soul's navigation system telling you that you've drifted from your natural resonance with the field of infinite intelligence that some call God, others call Source, and quantum physicists call the zero-point field. I know that feeling intimately, that profound sense of disconnection that makes you question everything you've ever believed about your place in the cosmic order. It's the feeling that prayer bounces off the ceiling, that your deepest longings dissolve into silence, that the universe has somehow moved to a different channel and left you tuning into static. You've tried everything, haven't you? More meditation, more rituals, more desperate reaching towards something that feels increasingly distant. You've wondered if you're being punished for some unknown transgression, if you've committed some spiritual crime that has severed your connection to the sacred. But what if I told you that this experience of separation is not a spiritual crisis at all, but a scientific phenomenon that can be understood through the lens of quantum mechanics and consciousness research? The truth that nobody talks about in spiritual circles is that the divine doesn't communicate through words or visions or burning bushes in the way our religious programming taught us to expect. The divine communicates through frequency, through vibrational resonance, through quantum entanglement at the deepest levels of your being. When you feel disconnected, you haven't lost God's love or fallen from grace. You've simply fallen out of coherent resonance with the frequency band where divine connection exists. Think of it like a radio that's gone slightly off station. The music is still broadcasting at full strength, but you're receiving mostly noise because your internal antenna has drifted from the signal. This disconnection isn't random, and it's certainly not permanent. It happens when your nervous system gets locked into survival frequencies, when stress and trauma and the constant bombardment of modern life shifts your entire energetic signature into lower vibrational states. Fear operates at roughly 100 Hz, shame at even lower frequencies, while love and connection and divine communion operate at much higher frequencies, in the range of 500 to 1000 Hz and beyond. When your body and mind are chronically stressed, when you're living in fight or flight mode, when you're operating from patterns of unworthiness or separation, your entire being becomes a radio tuned to static instead of symphony. But here's what changes everything. What shifts the entire game from suffering to celebration. The moment you understand that your feeling of disconnection is not about your worthiness or God's presence or absence, but about frequency alignment, you can begin to consciously adjust your internal antenna. You can learn to tune back into the divine broadcast that has never stopped transmitting love, guidance, and infinite intelligence directly to your consciousness. The separation you feel is an illusion created by misaligned frequency, not a reality created by divine abandonment. The ancient mystics knew this secret, encoded it in their teachings about becoming still and knowing that I am God, about finding the kingdom of heaven within. They understood that divine connection isn't something you achieve through external actions, but something you remember through internal alignment. When Jesus spoke about the Father and I being one, he was describing a state of frequency coherence, a vibrational unity that transcends the illusion of separation. When Buddha spoke of enlightenment as the cessation of suffering, he was pointing to the end of the frequency mismatch that creates the experience of being separate from the wholeness of existence. Modern quantum physics has given us the scientific framework to understand what the mystics knew intuitively. Consciousness is not produced by the brain but received by it, like a radio receiving a transmission. The universal field of consciousness that underlies all existence is constantly broadcasting infinite intelligence, unconditional love, and creative potential. Your individual consciousness is not separate from this field but is a unique expression of it, a specific frequency signature within the infinite symphony of cosmic consciousness. When you feel disconnected, your receiver has simply gone out of tune with the cosmic broadcast. The beautiful truth that will transform how you relate to your spiritual life is this: reconnection is not about doing more, trying harder, or proving your worthiness to a distant deity. Reconnection is about becoming still enough, coherent enough, present enough to naturally realign with the frequency you never actually left. It's about understanding that you are not a separate being trying to connect to God, but a divine being remembering your true nature. The feeling of disconnection is the cosmic alarm clock, the spiritual GPS recalibrating. the soul's built-in navigation system guiding you back to your natural state of unity with all that is. What you're about to discover will change not just how you pray or meditate, but how you understand the very nature of your existence and your relationship to the infinite intelligence that creates and sustains all life. This isn't about religion or dogma or believing the right things. This is about quantum science meets ancient wisdom, about practical spirituality that works because it aligns with how consciousness actually operates in this universe. Are you ready to remember who you really are? The first thing you need to understand about frequency alignment is that it's happening on levels far deeper than your conscious awareness. Every cell in your body is vibrating, every atom is spinning, every molecule is dancing to the rhythm of cosmic intelligence. When you feel disconnected from the divine, it's because this intricate symphony of vibration has become discordant, like an orchestra where half the instruments are playing in different keys. Your heart might be resonating at the frequency of fear, while your mind operates at the frequency of doubt, creating an internal cacophony that drowns out the subtle harmonies of divine communication. I learned this the hard way during what I now call my dark night of the soul, though at the time it felt more like a dark decade of the soul. I had meditated for years, read every spiritual book I could find, attended retreats and workshops and healings, yet still felt like I was speaking to an empty universe. The silence was deafening, the absence palpable, and I began to believe that either God didn't exist, or I was somehow fundamentally flawed, cosmically unworthy of divine connection. It wasn't until I discovered the science of heart coherence and brainwave entrainment that I realized my internal radio was completely scrambled, broadcasting and receiving on frequencies that guaranteed spiritual static. The breakthrough came when I understood that the divine doesn't speak in words but in coherence patterns, in synchronized brainwaves, in the measurable harmony between heart rhythm and neural activity. When your heart rate variability becomes coherent, when your brain waves synchronize into gamma frequency, when your nervous system shifts from sympathetic overdrive into parasympathetic peace, you create the internal conditions necessary for divine reception. It's not mystical, it's biological. It's not religious, it's scientific. The kingdom of heaven is within you because heaven is a frequency state, and you have the biological equipment to tune into it. This is where everything I thought I knew about spirituality got turned upside down. Prayer isn't about asking for things from an external deity. Prayer is about aligning your frequency with the infinite intelligence that is already broadcasting solutions, love, and guidance on wavelengths your coherent consciousness can receive. Meditation isn't about emptying your mind or transcending your humanity. Meditation is about synchronizing your brainwaves with the cosmic frequencies where divine wisdom naturally flows. Spiritual practice isn't about becoming worthy of God's attention. Spiritual practice is about becoming coherent enough to recognize that God's attention has never wavered, that infinite love has been streaming toward you every moment of your existence, waiting for your internal receiver to clear enough to detect the signal. The reason you feel most connected to the divine in nature isn't because God lives in trees and mountains. It's because natural environments emit coherent electromagnetic frequencies that help your nervous system entrain to peace, that help your heart find its natural rhythm, that help your brain waves synchronize with the Schumann resonance of the earth itself. When you walk in a forest and suddenly feel that sense of coming home, of remembering something precious you had forgotten, your biofield is literally aligning with the coherent frequency patterns of the living world around you. You're not imagining the peace you feel by the ocean. The rhythmic sound of waves naturally entrains your brain waves into alpha and theta states, where intuitive reception becomes possible. But here's what nobody tells you about this frequency alignment process. It requires letting go of the very things your ego believes will bring you closer to God. The spiritual striving, the effortful seeking, the desperate grasping for transcendent experiences, all of these create internal tension that guarantees frequency mismatch. The divine operates at the frequency of allowing, of receiving, of gentle presence, while desperation operates at the frequency of resistance, of force, of anxious control. You cannot reach divine connection through struggle, because struggle and connection exist on incompatible vibrational frequencies. This is the cosmic joke that every authentic spiritual teacher eventually discovers. The harder you try to find God, the more you guarantee your own disconnection. The more you seek enlightenment, the more you reinforce the belief that you're not already whole. The more you practice spiritual disciplines to become worthy, the more you affirm that you're currently unworthy. Divine connection doesn't require you to become something other than what you are. It requires you to become so deeply accepting of what you are that your natural frequency signature can emerge without interference from the worried mind or the performing ego. The moment you stop trying to connect and start allowing connection, something miraculous happens at the quantum level of your being. Your electromagnetic field, which has been chaotic and fragmented from years of spiritual striving and existential anxiety, begins to organize itself into coherent patterns. Your heart rhythm becomes smooth and wave-like instead of jagged and erratic. Your brain waves synchronize across different regions, creating what neuroscientists call whole brain coherence. And in this state of internal harmony, you become a living antenna capable of receiving the divine transmission that has been broadcasting toward you since the moment you took your first breath. This isn't metaphor or wishful thinking. This is measurable biophysics. When your nervous system shifts into coherence, you literally expand your capacity to perceive reality beyond the narrow bandwidth of survival consciousness. The gamma brain waves that characterize profound meditation states, the heart coherence patterns that accompany feelings of unconditional love, the synchronized neural networks that emerge during peak spiritual experiences, all of these can be detected and measured by modern scientific instruments. What our ancestors called divine communion, we now understand as expanded states of consciousness that become accessible when our biofield aligns with the zero-point field of infinite potential. I remember the exact moment my frequency reset happened. Not through any dramatic spiritual experience, but through the simple recognition that I had been approaching the divine like a beggar approaching a king, instead of like one wave recognizing its unity with the ocean. I was sitting in morning meditation, frustrated as usual by the silence, when something shifted in my understanding. I stopped asking God to reveal herself to me and started asking, how am I blocking my own recognition of the divinity that I am? The question itself created a different vibration, a frequency of curiosity instead of desperation, of self-inquiry instead of external seeking. What happened next changed everything. Instead of the familiar internal chatter about my spiritual inadequacy, a profound stillness descended. Not the empty silence I had been fighting against, but a pregnant silence. A silence full of presence and intelligence and what I can only describe as infinite tenderness. I realized that I had been mistaking the absence of mental noise for the absence of God, when in fact the divine had been speaking to me in the language of peace all along. The disconnection I felt was not God withdrawing from me, but my own mental turbulence drowning out the subtle frequencies of divine communication. This is the revolution that changes everything about how you approach your spiritual life. You are not a separate consciousness trying to connect to God. You are God consciousness having the temporary experience of forgetting your true nature. The feeling of disconnection is not evidence of your spiritual failure, but evidence of your awakening process beginning to work. Every soul goes through this sacred disillusionment where the small self realizes it cannot reach the divine through effort alone. It's not punishment, it's initiation. It's not abandonment, it's invitation. The universe is not testing your faith. It's preparing you to recognize that you are not separate from what you seek. The practical implications of this understanding are profound and immediate. Prayer transforms from pleading with an external deity to communion with your own deepest nature. Instead of asking God to change your circumstances, you align your frequency with the outcomes you desire, knowing that your coherent intention collaborates with infinite intelligence to create reality. Instead of seeking signs from heaven, you recognize that your intuitive knowing, your sudden inspirations, your perfect timing and synchronicities are all evidence of your constant communication with the field of infinite possibility. Meditation shifts from trying to achieve special states to simply becoming present enough to notice the divine intelligence that is already operating through your breathing, your heartbeat, your cellular regeneration, your immune system, every miraculous process that keeps you alive without any conscious effort on your part. The divine is not somewhere else waiting for your prayers. The divine is the very intelligence that is reading these words through your eyes right now. The awareness that is aware of your awareness. The consciousness in which all your thoughts and feelings and experiences arise and dissolve. But perhaps most importantly, you stop looking for God in extraordinary experiences and start recognizing the divine in the ordinary miracle of your existence. The fact that you are conscious, that you can love and be loved, that you can contemplate infinity while standing in a finite body, that you can create beauty and meaning and connection out of the raw materials of time and space and energy. This is not evidence of your separation from the sacred, but evidence of your participation in it. The frequency reset happens the moment you stop broadcasting the signal of "I am separate and seeking" and start emanating the frequency of "I am whole and present." This isn't a mental affirmation or spiritual practice. This is a quantum shift in your fundamental relationship to existence itself. When you recognize that the seeker and the sought are one, that the wave and the ocean are the same water, that your individual consciousness and universal consciousness are different expressions of the same infinite awareness, the artificial frequency barrier that created the illusion of disconnection simply dissolves. Your spiritual journey is not about finding God. Your spiritual journey is about remembering that God has never been lost, that divine connection is not something you achieve but something you are, and that every moment of feeling disconnected has been preparing you for this recognition. The quantum field doesn't respond to your desperation or your effort. It responds to your coherence, your presence, your willingness to be still enough to hear the love song that the universe has been singing to you since before time began. Now comes the moment of integration, where understanding transforms into embodiment, where knowledge becomes wisdom, where the frequency reset moves from concept to lived reality. The beautiful paradox of divine connection is that the moment you truly get it, the moment you recognize that you have never actually been separate from Source, you simultaneously realize that this recognition itself is not the end goal, but the beginning of a completely different way of being human. You don't reconnect with God to escape your humanity, but to bring divine consciousness fully into your human experience. This is where the rubber meets the road in your spiritual evolution. Maintaining frequency alignment is not about achieving some permanent state of bliss or transcendence that removes you from the challenges and complexities of earthly existence. It's about developing the capacity to remain coherent, to stay tuned to divine intelligence, even in the midst of chaos, uncertainty, and the inevitable difficulties that come with being a conscious being in a world that is still learning to wake up. True spiritual mastery is not about rising above the human experience, but about bringing heaven's frequency into Earth's reality. I discovered this truth during what seemed like the most unlikely circumstances. After months of feeling deeply connected, of experiencing that profound sense of unity and divine communication, life threw me a curveball that would have previously sent me spiraling into doubt and disconnection. A relationship ended suddenly, financial pressures mounted, and health challenges emerged seemingly out of nowhere. The old me would have interpreted these challenges as evidence that my spiritual connection was fake, that I had somehow fallen from grace, that the universe was punishing me or testing my faith. But something different happened this time. Instead of my frequency immediately dropping into fear and separation, I found myself curious about how to navigate difficulty while maintaining coherence. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" I found myself inquiring, "How is this serving my evolution? What is this experience teaching me about love? How can I use this challenge as an opportunity to deepen my trust in divine intelligence?" The questions themselves kept me aligned with the frequency of growth rather than victimhood, of collaboration rather than resistance. This is the ultimate test of your frequency reset. Can you feel connected to divine love when life feels loving? Of course. But can you maintain that connection when life feels chaotic? Can you trust divine intelligence when everything seems to be falling apart? Can you remain coherent when the world around you appears incoherent? This is where your spiritual rubber meets the road, where your understanding of quantum consciousness becomes practical wisdom rather than interesting philosophy. The secret is understanding that divine intelligence is not separate from the challenges you face, but is expressing itself through them. Every difficulty contains within it the seeds of your next level of consciousness evolution. Every breakdown is also a breakthrough waiting to be recognized. Every moment of disconnection is actually your soul's navigation system recalibrating toward even deeper connection. When you understand that the universe is not random but intelligently designed for your awakening, every experience becomes a sacred collaboration rather than a meaningless struggle. This shift in perspective creates what I call quantum resilience. Instead of being knocked off your spiritual center by difficult experiences, you learn to surf them, to find your balance point even in turbulent energy, to maintain your connection to divine intelligence even when external circumstances suggest chaos. You develop the capacity to be fully human, while simultaneously knowing yourself as divine consciousness, to feel all your emotions while remaining anchored in the peace that surpasses understanding, to engage completely with your earthly experience while maintaining your frequency connection to infinite possibility. The practical result of this quantum resilience is that your entire life becomes a prayer, a meditation, a continuous communion with the divine intelligence that is orchestrating your experience. You don't have to set aside special time to connect with God because every moment becomes an opportunity for connection. Every conversation becomes a chance to express divine love. Every challenge becomes an invitation to trust divine wisdom. Every breath becomes a communion with the infinite intelligence that is sustaining your existence moment by moment. This is not about perfection or never struggling or always feeling blissful. This is about developing the capacity to recognize divine intelligence operating through all of it. The difficult and the beautiful, the challenging and the easy, the breakdown and the breakthrough. When you truly understand that you are not separate from the cosmic intelligence that creates galaxies and orchestrates ecosystems, you realize that your individual life is not separate from that same intelligence. Your dreams, your challenges, your relationships, your creative expressions, all of it is divine consciousness exploring itself through the unique lens of your human experience. If this journey of frequency alignment resonates in the depths of your being, if you feel like you've found a missing piece of the spiritual puzzle that makes sense of your experience, then welcome to your conscious community. This is where seekers become finders, where questions become doorways, where the feeling of disconnection becomes the invitation to the deepest connection possible. Share with us in the comments your own moments of quantum reconnection, the experiences that have helped you recognize your true nature, the challenges that have actually served to deepen your trust in divine intelligence. What themes would support your continued awakening as a coherent observer of reality? Your journey is unique, but you don't have to walk it alone. The frequency of God is not something you tune into occasionally during meditation. It's what you are, what you've always been, and what you can never actually lose. Today is not about finding that connection. Today is about remembering that the connection was never lost, and that every moment of your existence is proof of the infinite love that is the ground of all being. The reset is complete. Welcome home.